Good morning, precious friends. I greet you in the sweet hope of Jesus today. I don't know if you have a favorite flower. I do. And I guess it's not really a flower, but since it does bloom and it flowers, I'm adding it to the list. And while I love lilies and roses for their beauty and for their fragrance, my all-time favorite flower, wait for it, is a dandelion. Oh, isn't it lovely? Now, you might look at it and say, oh, it's just a weed. And I guess technically you would be right. But for me, there is such beauty in this plant. I even have a necklace with a dandelion engraved on it, and I wear it all the time. I love it. It's my favorite. Now, the dandelion's my favorite flower because every time I see it, I think of perseverance and I think of hope. I'd like you to look at this picture, and I think you'll understand a little bit better why I love the dandelion. Do you see the cement ground and the concrete walls? Nothing is supposed to grow there, but against all odds, there it is, a dandelion growing and blooming in an impossible place. It reminds me a little bit of the story of Abraham. Abraham, who was uprooted from his home and his land and his family, from everything that was familiar, and believing the promise of God of being made into the father of a great nation, Abraham takes his wife and walks confidently into the unknown, holding tightly onto the known hand of God. And they move forward, believing, trusting, hoping for this child that would be the beginning of the fulfillment of this beautiful promise that God had made to him. Years pass, time goes on, biological clocks go from ticking to rapidly whirling by, and the window for the opportunity of the son of promise to be born passes too. And there were times when Sarah didn't wait well. She got tired of waiting. It was hard to wait, and so she took matters into her own hands. And as always happens when we stop trusting God and we start trusting in our contingency plans or start believing that He needs, a little help to get His promise fulfilled, there were consequences, sad, painful consequences. Years later, Abraham is now 99 years old. And God speaks to him again and tells him that he is still going to be the father of a nation. And not just one, but the father of many nations. Wow. Abraham might have looked down at his body and felt his wrinkle or fading hairline. And he finds this news incredible. And he asks himself in Genesis 17, verse 17, how could I become a father at the age of 100? And then he might have looked over and said, Sarah and said, besides, Sarah is 90. How could she have a baby? But God had said it. It certainly didn't make sense. It didn't even seem possible. The odds were stacked against them. Time wasn't on their side. In fact, the childbearing door seemed firmly shut. But Abraham did as God required, and Abraham believed. Abraham had hope, even when there seemed to be no reason for hope. Abraham chose to believe God and not believe what his circumstances were telling him. Against all hope, Abraham believes. Even when there was no visible reason for hope, Abraham keeps on hoping, believing that in time he would become the father of many nations. Why? Because God had said it to him. Romans chapter 4 verse 20 to 21 speaks about Abraham's hope and faith, and it says, Abraham never wavered in believing God's promises. In fact, his faith grew stronger, and in this he brought glory to God. He was absolutely convinced that God was able to do anything he promised. And we see as the story unfolds that Abraham's hope is rewarded with the birth of his precious and beautiful son, Isaac. It's almost like that dandelion growing and blooming where it couldn't and shouldn't, but did anyway, despite being surrounded by concrete. Today I want to encourage you to let your hope bloom and even disperse its seeds to others who are struggling. You might feel surrounded by concrete. You might feel like you are in a hard place. Your hope might be waning, and Circumstances may even leave you feeling a little doubtful. In spite of circumstances, in spite of appearances, when the situation screams impossible, I encourage you to remember the story of Abraham. Remember the dandelion and allow hope to grow and let it bloom in your heart and mind today. Remember what God has said to you. Trust His heart. Submit to His timing. Recall the promises that He has given to you. And in spite of and against all odds, let hope rise. And believe staunchly, unfalteringly, steadfastly, unshakably. Believe. And then rest in the knowledge that He who promised is faithful. God bless you.